Night unfolds over the timeless sands of Egypt, wrapping the land in a veil of silver light. The Nile glimmers beneath the stars, winding endlessly through the desert like a living vein of memory. Its waters shimmer softly, whispering secrets to those who listen. Secrets older than empires, older than language itself. Along its banks the air is heavy with the scent of lotus and stone, and the stillness hums with something eternal. It is within this stillness that the story begins. The story of a god who wrote the language of creation, of a book said to hold the voice of the universe itself. Moonlight spills across ancient temples rising from the mist, their pillars carved with prayers that once called to the heavens. Flames from distant torches flicker through the darkness, casting reflections across the sacred river. Somewhere, deep within those shadowed halls, a priest chants a name, Thoth, the keeper of balance, the scribe of the gods, the master of wisdom hidden beyond time. His voice fades, but its echo lingers in the night air, carried by the slow breath of the Nile. Each ripple upon the water feels alive, as if listening. Far from the noise of cities and the rush of modern life, this world feels untouched, suspended between dream and memory. The desert stretches out in silence, its dunes glowing under the pale light of the moon. Every grain of sand seems to remember, holding within it the echo of footsteps from those who once sought the mysteries of Thoth's divine knowledge. The ibis glides low across the river's surface, its wings whispering like parchment, turning in an invisible hand. Those who gaze upon this scene sense that the night itself is alive with thought. Legends say that Thoth recorded the secrets of gods and men upon invisible scrolls of light, a book so sacred that it held the power to command the elements and reveal the architecture of the cosmos. The priests who served him guarded their knowledge carefully, knowing that wisdom, if misused, can become destruction. Yet those who approached with reverence found themselves transformed. They did not simply learn, they awakened. To them, Thoth was not a distant deity, but a living presence. The breath within words, the order behind the stars, the silent observer within every mind. Each sound that rises from the night, the rustle of reeds, the soft lap of water against stone, feels like part of an ancient rhythm, a heartbeat that never stopped. The Nile becomes not merely a river, but a voice, a teacher, and a guide. It calls to those who wander through the darkness of thought, inviting them to remember what was forgotten. To listen to its whisper is to listen to eternity itself. And somewhere within that vast silence lies the first hint of the mystery, the beginning of the path that leads to the Book of Thoth. If you enjoy drifting through stories like this, tales that carry you through mystery, history, and the calm flow of imagination, support this journey. Subscribe to the channel, like this film, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every gesture keeps the river of stories flowing and helps this circle of dreamers grow beneath the quiet light of the moon. Beneath the eternal gaze of the moon, Thoth watched the movements of creation with eyes that never slept. His form shimmered between worlds, part man, part ibis, a reflection of both intellect and spirit. Legends described him not merely as a god of writing, but as the first consciousness to understand the balance between light and shadow, order and chaos. He was the scribe who recorded the birth of the stars, the architect who measured the heavens with lines of silver thought. His presence was not confined to temples or carvings. It existed wherever truth sought form. Those who whispered his name did so with reverence, for he embodied the quiet intelligence that gave shape to all existence. Within the temples of Hermopolis, priests devoted their lives to the rhythm of Thoth's wisdom. They believed he had written the language of the cosmos itself, and that through him sound became creation. Every ritual, every chant, every inscribed glyph was a reflection of his will. He stood beside Ra, guiding the sun's journey across the sky, ensuring balance between night and day. When darkness threatened to consume light, Thoth was the mediator, restoring order with the precision of divine mathematics. His mind was a mirror of the universe, each thought a constellation, each word a sacred number. Those who meditated upon his name often felt an invisible current pass through them, a pulse of clarity, as if the veil between mortal understanding and divine perception had briefly thinned. Thoth was the quiet witness to every transformation of life. He measured the growth of reeds, the motion of stars, the breath of gods. To him, knowledge was not possession, but alignment. He did not hoard secret. He carried them as one carries water in cupped hands, gently, reverently, allowing a few drops to fall for those who were ready to drink. Priests described him as standing between the worlds of the living and the dead, the bridge between seen and unseen. In sacred writings, he was depicted weighing the words of men, balancing truth against deceit. His ibis head symbolized precision, his lunar crown reflected the rhythm of cycles, and his pen was said to be carved from the feather of cosmic memory. As the moon waxed and waned, he recorded the unfolding of time, ensuring that nothing was lost, not even a whisper of thought. To gaze upon Thoth's image was to be reminded of silence, not absence of sound, but the stillness from which sound is born. His wisdom did not roar like thunder, it unfolded softly like ripples upon calm water. Scribes who served under his name worked through the night, writing by moonlight, believing their hands were guided by unseen forces. They said that when their minds became still, Thoth's hand would move through theirs, and words would appear that no mortal could have conceived alone. Every act of writing was an offering, a dialogue with the divine. To inscribe a word was to participate in creation itself. The Egyptians called this sacred act Medu Netja, the words of the gods. Thoth was their source and their guardian. He taught that language held the power to heal or to destroy, to open hearts or to bind souls. In his silent understanding, every letter was alive, every sound carried intention. Through this, he became the master of transformation, the one who could turn thought into matter and spirit into form. Within the heart of the cosmos, Thoth was both observer and creator. He recorded, yet he also inspired. He measured, yet he also dreamed. When storms raged upon the Nile, the priests said Thoth had spoken too loudly. When the river calmed, they said he had smiled upon the world once more. His essence was not confined to temples or scrolls, for he moved through time itself, ensuring that wisdom would never be extinguished. Many believed that he guarded a secret beyond all others, the knowledge of how the universe speaks to itself. It was said that every star, every heartbeat, every ripple of wind carried his message. To hear it was to awaken. To understand it was to transcend. Those who sought his mysteries did not seek power but balance, for to know Thoth was to understand that wisdom without harmony leads only. The ibis still stands along the riverbanks, patient and knowing. In its silent poise, the image of Thoth endures, a reminder that true understanding arises not from noise, but from stillness. Beneath the quiet gaze of the moon, his voice continues to echo, guiding seekers toward the hidden geometry of truth. Ancient Egypt once breathed with sound, a living symphony of water, wind, and sacred rhythm. Among these harmonies emerged a miracle, writing, the eternal language of memory. To the Egyptians, it was not invention but revelation. They believed Thoth had drawn the first symbols in the dust with his own finger, tracing the lines of creation itself. These were not marks to be read, but vibrations to be felt, each curve a resonance between spirit and form. Words, they said, were not made by men, they were born from the gods. In the earliest temples, scribes gathered by torchlight, listening to the priests chant the names of the divine. Their brushes dipped into black and red ink, they began to inscribe those sacred utterances upon papyrus. Every stroke of the reed was a breath of devotion. The symbols they drew were alive, glowing in the flicker of the flame, as if remembering their celestial origin. The act of writing was not communication, it was invocation. To write was to awaken the spirit of a thing, to bind its essence within sound and sign. Each hieroglyph carried an echo of divine order. The bird, the serpent, the star, the eye, all spoke a silent language that mirrored the structure of the universe. The walls of temples became immense scrolls upon which eternity was recorded. Those who passed through their halls walked amidst prayers turned to stone. Every carving, every inscription pulsed with unseen energy, reminding all who looked upon them that words could shape destiny. Scribes were guardians of this sacred power. They did not see themselves as authors, but as intermediaries between gods and men. When they wrote, their hands trembled slightly, for they knew that each symbol could shift the balance of the unseen. Their minds were trained not only in language but in silence. Before beginning their work, they would meditate beside the water, cleansing their thoughts so that the voice of Thoth might speak through them. Through the written word, men touched immortality. Names inscribed upon tombs ensured the soul's endurance beyond death. Prayers etched into stone carried the breath of those long gone, whispering still to the gods above. The Egyptians understood that forgetting was a kind of second death. Writing became the bridge that spanned the chasm between the living and the departed, a way for memory to speak across eternity. In moments of deep stillness, the sound of chanting merged with the scratching of reed upon papyrus. The two rhythms, voice and symbol, intertwined like strands of divine energy. To hear such a moment was to feel the presence of Thoth moving through time. The priests taught that the written word was the body of sound, while sound itself was its soul. Together they formed the living essence of truth. When the scribes gazed upon their completed texts, they did not see stories or records, but living entities. Each scroll breathed with hidden light. They believed that to speak these words aloud was to stir the forces of creation itself. The Egyptians called this Heka, the power by which speech could shape the fabric of existence. Through writing, Thoth had given mankind a tool not only for remembrance, but for transformation. Across centuries, the symbols of Egypt remained constant, their meanings unbroken, their magic intact. Every temple bore witness to this sacred dialogue between the human and the divine. Even as empires rose and fell, the written word endured, carrying within it the whisper of gods. The Book of Thoth, it was said, contained the purest form of this language, a script of light capable of commanding all realms. Those who glimpsed it spoke of letters that moved like fire, of words that sang when read aloud. The origins of writing were more than invention, they were awakening. The first hieroglyph drawn upon clay or stone was not simply a record of thought, it was the echo of divine breath, captured and preserved. In that moment, humankind stepped into partnership with eternity, guided by the silent wisdom of Thoth, whose voice still murmured within the ink and shadow of every sacred line. Long after the first temples were built, whispers began to spread through Egypt of a hidden manuscript, a book said to contain all the wisdom of the heavens and the secrets of the gods. They called it the Book of Thoth, written not by mortal hand, but by the god himself. It was said to hold knowledge that could command the elements, reveal the language of the stars, and grant mastery over life and death. Those who heard its name felt both fascination and fear, for every truth it promised seemed to carry an unseen cost. Legends describe the book as radiant, glowing with divine light, its pages alive with symbols that shifted as one read them. The words were not meant for ordinary eyes. Only a heart purified by devotion and humility could withstand its truth. To read even a fragment, the priest said, was to feel the universe awaken within one's soul, yet to misuse it was to call upon forces beyond control. Such was the paradox of the divine, illumination entwined with peril. The book's hiding place was a mystery that haunted generations. Some believed it rested deep within the waters of the Nile, guarded by serpents of light. Others spoke of secret chambers beneath temples where priests of Thoth kept watch through unending ages. There were those who claimed that the book was never written in ink at all, but carved into the invisible fabric of creation, accessible only to those whose spirits had become one with the rhythm of the divine. Every seeker who pursued it faced a trial, not of strength, but of spirit. The legends tell of men who went mad upon glimpsing its glow, their minds unable to contain its revelation. Others disappeared into the desert, following dreams that led them to endless dunes and silent stars. The priests warned that wisdom stolen rather than earned turns to ash. The true reader of the Book of Thoth would be one who sought not power, but understanding, one who wished to serve, not to rule. The few who claimed to have seen fragments described the letters as alive, woven from moonlight and shadow. They moved like serpents upon the page, reshaping themselves according to the reader's thoughts. The book reflected the soul of whoever opened it. To the pure, it revealed harmony. To the proud, it revealed chaos. In that way, it was both teacher and mirror, a living test of the heart. Temples across Egypt carried hints of its existence in carvings and hymns. Certain scrolls spoke of Thoth dictating words of creation to the first priests, who hid them in sacred chambers for the safety of mankind. The story endured because it touched the deepest longing within the human spirit, the desire to know the language of the gods, to pierce the veil of mystery that separates the mortal from the eternal. Many who pondered its existence believed the Book of Thoth was not merely an object, but a state of being, a level of consciousness where divine knowledge flowed freely. To read it was to become it, to see through the eyes of creation itself. In dreams, seekers spoke of pages made of light, of words that formed themselves in the air before vanishing again into silence. Perhaps the true book was not hidden in the earth, but in the unseen depths of awareness. Yet the tales never faded. Travelers, priests, and dreamers all told their versions. The book was said to move, never remaining in one place for long. Some claimed it appeared to those standing at the threshold between life and death, offering glimpses of truth before the soul departed. Others said Thoth himself guarded it within his celestial library, waiting until humanity was ready to bear the weight of its knowledge. Night after night, the Nile continued its quiet song, and the stars turned overhead as they always had. Somewhere, hidden beneath the folds of eternity, the Book of Thoth awaited the one whose heart could open it without fear. To seek it was to walk between worlds, through shadow and light, through silence and revelation, guided by the eternal whisper of the God who first taught mankind to write the voice of the divine. Long before the shifting sands buried the last whispers of ancient kings, A prince named Neferkaptah was said to have defied heaven itself. He was born beneath a sky heavy with moonlight, a child touched by destiny, his mind sharp and restless, his heart filled with yearning for divine knowledge. While others sought crowns or treasures, he sought the secret language of the gods, the words that shaped creation. He heard tales of a book written by Thoth, hidden from mortal eyes, containing power to command heaven and earth. Those stories haunted his dreams until they no longer felt like legends, but invitations whispered by unseen forces. His tutors warned that such wisdom was forbidden, that to touch the sacred script was to awaken the wrath of the divine. Yet Neferkaptah's hunger grew, fed by visions that came each night as he slept. In those visions he saw letters of light floating upon the Nile, calling his name. He awoke, drenched in sweat, convinced that Thoth himself was testing his resolve. Temples could no longer contain his curiosity. He began searching through ancient scrolls, questioning priests who trembled at his persistence. What began as fascination soon turned into obsession. Desperation led him to an old priest living near the edge of the river, a man who claimed to know fragments of the secret. Under moonlit silence, the priest spoke of a hidden place deep within the waters, guarded by serpents of fire and divine spells. There, at the bottom of the sacred river, rested the Book of Thoth, sealed within an iron box, enclosed by another of bronze, then of gold, then of silver, then of crystal, until 7 layers shielded it from profane hands. The priest begged him to abandon his quest, warning that the gods protect what men are not meant to claim, but Neferkaptah's heart was deaf to warning. When dawn rose over the Nile, he ordered a small boat prepared and descended into the mist with his wife Ahura and their young son Merab. The waters parted before him like a mirror splitting open. As the boat drifted, he chanted invocations taught by the priest, calling upon the power of Thoth. Suddenly the river erupted with brilliance, the serpents of fire coiling upward, their eyes burning with celestial flame. The prince drew his sword and spoke sacred words until the air trembled. One by one the serpents bowed and vanished into the depths. The final guardian, a great serpent with scales of emerald, resisted him. For 3 days they battled, their struggle echoing across the Nile until Neferkaptah struck the creature with a spell of pure sound, sealing it within silence. When the waters calmed, he dived into the river's heart and found the crystal box resting upon the silt of eternity. He opened it layer by layer until the final lid lifted, revealing the Book of Thoth. The light that emerged blinded him, flooding his mind with visions of endless stars, voices of angels, and the pulse of creation itself. His spirit soared beyond flesh. He felt as if he had become part of the divine current. Holding the book close, he returned to the surface, trembling with awe and terror. His triumph, however, was shadowed by unease. As he read aloud the first lines, the world around him seemed to shift. Trees whispered his name. Birds ceased their song. Even the Nile grew still, as if the earth itself listened. Each word he spoke resonated through reality, reshaping wind and water. He could command spirits, speak with the dead, and glimpse hidden realms. Yet with each reading, his joy turned colder, his eyes darker. The more he understood, the more he felt distance from those he loved. Thoth, angered that his sacred book had been stolen, called upon Ra to punish the mortal who dared disturb divine order. That night, as Neferkaptah slept, a shadow passed over his house. Ahura dreamt of a voice that warned her of the curse. Death would follow all who had touched the forbidden text. At dawn, she begged her husband to return it, but pride held him fast. Within days their son drowned in the Nile, claimed by the very river that had once guided them. Grief filled their home like a storm that would not cease. Haunted by sorrow, Neferkaptah realized that knowledge without reverence brings ruin. He wrapped the book once more in its coverings and prepared to return it to the depths. But fate had already sealed his end. Before reaching the river, Ahura fell lifeless, her spirit drawn into the underworld. Alone and broken, the prince sailed once more upon the Nile, chanting prayers to Thoth. As the waters opened, he placed the book back into its prison and surrendered his own life beside it. His body was later found embraced by silence, a faint smile upon his lips, as if he had glimpsed what lies beyond the reach of mortals. Priests later spoke of seeing his spirit wandering near the riverbanks on moonlit nights, guarding the place where the book sleeps. His curse became his purpose, his punishment his guardianship. Those who sought the Book of Thoth thereafter would hear his voice in dreams, warning them that not all wisdom is meant to be seized, and not every light can be held without burning the soul. Nile flows endlessly, winding through the sands like a silver thread stitched into the fabric of eternity. Its waters have witnessed everything: the rise of kings, the fall of empires, the prayers of the living, the silence of the dead. Yet beneath its surface, something deeper moves. Not just water, but remembrance. The river remembers every word ever spoken along its banks, every ritual ever performed, every secret whispered beneath the stars. It carries memory the way the wind carries scent, invisible yet eternal. To the Egyptians, the Nile was not merely a river, but the body of the divine itself, the pulse of the world's consciousness. Its flow mirrored the passage of time, the cycle of life and death, knowledge and forgetting. When the priests gazed upon its glittering surface, they did not see only reflection, but revelation. They believed that the river connected the realm of men with the underworld and the heavens above. It was the thread that wove together creation's three dimensions: the physical, the spiritual, and the eternal. As moonlight shimmered upon its current, they heard whispers rising from beneath. The voices of those who had lived before, calling softly through the liquid veil. They said the river sang to those who listened with their hearts, reminding them of truths long forgotten. It murmured of balance, of humility, of the sacred rhythm binding all things. To drift upon it at night was to drift within one's own mind, carried by waves of remembrance and dream. In the still hours before dawn, the priests would stand upon its banks, silent, their eyes half closed, feeling the water's vibration through their feet. They spoke of a subtle energy flowing through the current, a memory of divine creation still echoing after thousands of years. For them, the Nile was a teacher. Its constancy reminded them that wisdom must flow freely. To hoard it is to let it stagnate, to share it is to keep it alive. Neferkaptah's spirit, bound to the river's memory, was said to guide the current through unseen realms. His sacrifice became part of the river's consciousness. To those who meditated by its side, he appeared not as a ghost, but as a presence, a calm thought in the mind, a flicker of light beneath the surface. His tale, once tragedy, transformed into lesson. That true knowledge flows not from conquest but surrender. Each droplet that touched the shore carried a story, each ripple a fragment of the past. Travelers who journeyed by boat through the Nile's vast embrace often claimed to dream of ancient temples glowing beneath the surface, as if submerged beneath centuries of sand and time. The river, they said, never forgets. It guards the echoes of every soul who ever sought meaning within its depths. When the wind rose over the water, it carried the scent of lotus, the flower of rebirth. The petals floating upon the current symbolized the soul's awakening, rising from the darkness of ignorance into the light of understanding. To meditate upon the Nile was to mirror that same movement within oneself, letting the mind drift until the boundaries between self and world dissolved into stillness. Those who gazed too long into the river sometimes felt that it gazed back. In its reflection, one could glimpse the shimmering veil of consciousness itself. To look deeply enough was to realize that the river outside and the river within were the same, both flowing from the same source, both returning to the same sea of eternal awareness. As the sun rose above its horizon, casting gold upon the water, the river revealed its eternal truth. Memory is not bound by time, nor wisdom by form. The current that moves through the Nile moves also through the soul, carrying fragments of divine remembrance toward the ocean of awakening. Egyptian priests believed that every sound born from human lips possessed a pulse of divine energy. Speech was not mere communication, but an act of creation, for within every word lived a spark of Thoth's original power. The ancients called this sacred force Heka, the essence that binds the world together, the current by which gods and mortals alike shape reality. When a priest spoke with clarity and intent, the universe listened. When a word was uttered without harmony, the world trembled in quiet dissonance. Within the temples, the air itself shimmered with enchantment. Walls covered in hieroglyphs seemed to hum under torchlight, their shapes alive with invisible resonance. Chants drifted upward toward the vaulted ceilings, blending rhythm and breath until they became more than sound. They became vibration, the heartbeat of eternity. Each syllable struck the air like a wave upon the sea, rippling through dimensions unseen. In those moments, the difference between language and music dissolved. The priests who studied under Thoth's teachings devoted their lives to mastering this sacred science. Before dawn, they purified themselves with water from the Nile, breathing slowly until the world grew silent around them. Only when the inner noise ceased could the divine sound flow through them. Their rituals were measured with precision, tone, pitch, and rhythm, chosen not by preference, but by cosmic law. Every utterance was a bridge between thought and matter. Scribes understood that writing and speech were two halves of the same magic. To write a word was to plant its seed in the soil of time. To speak it was to give it breath. Both required purity of heart, for words born from anger or vanity could distort the balance of creation. To wield Heka without reverence was to grasp lightning with bare hands. Those who honored it became healers, visionaries, and keepers of the world's harmony. When priests healed the sick, they did not merely apply medicine, they spoke the illness into transformation. Words became medicine, sound became light. A single phrase, spoken with intention, could alter the rhythm of a person's spirit. The ancient texts describe how the dying were guided into peace through whispers of sacred language, their souls carried gently toward the next life by the power of divine sound. The understanding of Heka extended beyond temples into daily life. Farmers sang as they sowed their fields, believing their voices invited fertility. Sailors whispered charms to the wind, asking it to guide their boats safely home. Mothers hummed the names of gods over their children as protection from unseen forces. Every sound, every word, every breath was part of the living dialogue between humanity and divinity. Those who sought deeper mastery learned that silence was the truest form of Heka. Before creation, before sound itself, there existed stillness, the womb from which every word was born. To speak effectively, one had to listen first, to hear the quiet rhythm beneath the noise of thought. This listening was prayer without speech, connection without form. It was through such stillness that the voice of Thoth could be heard, not as sound, but as awareness. The ancient songs recorded on temple walls tell of times when gods walked among men, teaching them how to speak light into being. Thoth's followers preserved those melodies within their rituals, knowing that the same vibrations could open hidden doors within the mind. The chants were said to awaken dormant wisdom, aligning the soul with the movement of the stars. Every word, every symbol, every tone carried the echo of that first divine utterance that called the world into existence. Those who remembered this truth treated language with reverence, shaping their speech as carefully as a sculptor shapes stone. For they knew that to speak was to touch eternity, to summon from silence the living spirit of creation itself. Rising from the desert like colossal dreams carved in stone, the temples dedicated to Thoth shimmered beneath the gaze of the moon. Each structure was more than a monument. It was a breathing organism built to reflect the balance between heaven and earth. The ancients believed architecture was a form of invocation, that stone could hold vibration just as a word could carry spirit. Every wall, every corridor, every beam of light filtering through the columns followed sacred geometry designed not merely to shelter worshippers but to guide their minds toward cosmic order. At Hermopolis, where Thoth was most revered, the temple stood upon ground said to hum with the music of creation. Pilgrims traveled across dunes and riverbanks to reach it, carrying offerings of papyrus, incense, and silence. Upon entering, they found themselves surrounded by hieroglyphs that glowed faintly in torchlight. Symbols of ibis and crescent moon, feathers of truth, eyes that watched from eternity. To step into that space was to leave the world of men and enter the rhythm of the divine. The air inside seemed alive, thick with unseen energy, as if the stones themselves were remembering every prayer ever spoken within their walls. Priests moved quietly through shadowed halls, their footsteps barely audible against the cool floor. They carried lamps that flickered like stars, illuminating carvings of Thoth as both man and bird, holding the pen of judgment and the scroll of time. Each ceremony was timed to the movement of the moon, its waxing and waning dictating when certain prayers were to be spoken, when offerings were to be made. Light and darkness were not enemies in these places, but companions, partners in the eternal dance of balance. At the heart of Hermopolis stood a chamber known only to initiates, a sanctuary of silence where the boundaries between thought and form grew thin. Within that dim space, a pool of still water reflected the ceiling's painted constellations, creating the illusion that one stood between two skies. The priests believed that gazing into that reflection allowed the soul to glimpse the higher realms where Thoth wrote the destinies of all beings. Every ritual performed there was meant to mirror the acts of creation itself, each gesture a reflection of cosmic truth. Farther south, temples carved into cliffs near Aswan held inscriptions dedicated to Thoth's lunar aspect. Their corridors were arranged so that moonlight entered only on particular nights, illuminating a single relief where Thoth's ibis face seemed to awaken in silver light. Pilgrims who witnessed that glow knelt in silence, believing they were standing at the threshold between visible and invisible worlds. The experience was not spectacle, but revelation, a reminder that wisdom reveals itself only in darkness softened by light. Every corner of those sacred places carried meaning. The alignment of pillars, the direction of stairways, the placement of statues, all echoed celestial order. Builders believed they were not constructing temples, but extending heaven into the earth. Through precise harmony of proportion and vibration, they invited divine presence to dwell within the human realm. To walk through such corridors was to walk through thought made solid, the language of Thoth translated into stone. At night, when the priests extinguished the lamps, the temple did not sleep. Wind whispered through open gates, carrying fragments of chant and the scent of myrrh. Those who remained felt a subtle hum beneath their feet, as if the earth itself breathed in rhythm with the stars. Within that stillness, they could almost hear the faint scratching of a divine quill, recording the endless unfolding of time. Temples of Thoth were sanctuaries of both illumination and mystery. They taught that truth was not found in blinding brightness, but in the soft dialogue between shadow and flame. The moonlight filtering through the columns became a metaphor for understanding, gentle, reflective, and precise. Those who emerged from those halls carried with them a serenity that no earthly sound could disturb, as if a fragment of celestial order had taken root within their souls. Night sky over Egypt stretched vast and unbroken, the stars suspended like notes of a celestial song. Among them, the moon drifted slowly, calm and radiant, keeper of rhythms both cosmic and human. To the followers of Thoth, the moon was not merely light reflected upon darkness, but the visible mind of the divine. It embodied reflection, calculation, and the endless cycle of renewal. Through its phases, priests read the movement of thought itself, waxing into fullness, waning into contemplation, vanishing into silence before being born again. Thoth was called Lord of the Moon, not because he ruled over it, but because he reflected its essence, the intellect illuminated by spirit. The waxing phase represented the gathering of knowledge, the waning, the distillation of wisdom. Those who studied under his name sought to imitate that rhythm in their lives, alternating between learning and reflection, speaking and listening, action and rest. To live in harmony with the moon was to live in balance with one's own mind. Within temple observatories, priests charted the moon's path across the heavens, noting how its light touched the earth in shifting patterns. Each phase determined the tone of their rituals, the songs they sang, the prayers they uttered. They believed that human consciousness was woven into the same rhythm, that moods, dreams, and intuitions rose and fell with the moon's pulse. To understand those cycles was to understand the workings of the soul itself. Lunar nights were filled with quiet devotion. Scribes sat beside pools of still water, allowing the reflection of the moon to fill their gaze until outer sight dissolved into inner vision. They described the sensation as entering the mind of Thoth, where thought flowed like gentle waves and understanding came not through reasoning, but through calm awareness. In those moments, they felt no separation between themselves and the universe, only a continuous field of consciousness illuminated by soft light. The moon's dual nature fascinated the ancients. It shone with borrowed light, yet commanded tides and time itself. It was both passive and powerful, distant yet intimate. Thoth's followers saw in this paradox the essence of true wisdom: to lead through reflection rather than domination, to influence through harmony rather than force. Just as the moon guides the tides without touching the sea, so does divine intelligence move the world without violence. Meditation upon the moon became a sacred practice. Priests taught that gazing upon its surface cleansed the mind of confusion, aligning the spirit with truth. The moon was the mirror of conscience. In its glow, every hidden thought revealed itself. To look upon it with honesty was to weigh one's heart upon the scales of Ma'at, the eternal law of balance. Thoth stood beside that scale, recording not judgment but truth, ensuring that each soul remained aligned with cosmic order. Dreams under the moon carried special significance. People believed that during those hours, Thoth opened the gates between waking and sleeping worlds. Visions that came beneath his light were treated as messages from the divine. Many great builders and healers claimed their inspiration came from such nocturnal communion. A whisper in the night, a symbol seen in dream, a word that lingered upon waking like the residue of eternity. Moonlight became the bridge between intellect and intuition, reason and mystery. It illuminated not by overpowering darkness, but by embracing it. Those who lived according to lunar rhythm learned to trust the unseen currents within themselves. They became attuned to subtleties, the pause between breaths, the space between thoughts, the silence from which creation unfolds. Within that silence, they felt Thoth's presence, not as a god to be worshipped from afar, but as the living intelligence within their own awareness. As the moon completed its eternal circle, so too did the mind return to stillness. To follow its path was to walk the cycle of thought, birth, growth, fullness, release, rest, and renewal. Those who understood this rhythm no longer feared change, for they knew that every decline was a preparation for new ascent. Under Thoth's moon, they learned that wisdom does not shine constantly, but moves in waves, allowing both light and shadow to teach their lessons. Beyond the reach of mortal eyes, hidden in a realm between light and silence, sages spoke of a library not built of stone or wood, but woven from starlight and thought. They called it the Hall of Records, the divine archive, where Thoth preserved every movement of existence. Within its infinite corridors, time was not linear, but living, each moment stored as a note within the symphony of eternity. The ancients believed that Thoth walked among these shelves, recording not only the deeds of men, but their intentions, their dreams, and even their forgotten prayers. Every star in the sky was said to be a fragment of that library, each one containing a story inscribed in light. To look upward at night was to glimpse the scattered pages of the divine text. The priests who studied celestial patterns spoke of constellations as paragraphs, of planets as punctuation, guiding the rhythm of creation. Through those lights, Thoth communicated the order of the cosmos, teaching humanity to read the heavens as one would read sacred scripture. In their visions, initiates described endless halls lined with scrolls of living light. Each scroll, when touched, unfolded into vision, not of words, but of memory. One could witness entire lifetimes as shimmering images, flowing like water. The souls of the departed walked those halls, adding their experiences to the great archive, ensuring that nothing ever vanished completely. Memory was eternal. Only form changed. Within this celestial library, Thoth was not a warden, but a harmonizer. His task was not to judge, but to record, not to command, but to preserve. He ensured that every joy and sorrow, every birth and death, every thought and silence found its rightful place within the cosmic balance. To the Egyptians, this image of divine record-keeping was both comforting and humbling, proof that nothing was lost and that all things were woven into a greater order beyond comprehension. Those who meditated deeply upon this vision claimed to feel the presence of the library within their own minds. Each thought, each memory, each dream became a scroll inscribed within their consciousness. The act of remembering was not merely personal reflection, but communion with the divine memory that underlies creation. To recall was to connect. To forget was to drift further from the rhythm of truth. Priests of Thoth taught that one could access fragments of this celestial knowledge through silence and devotion. When the mind became still enough, when the heart aligned with the rhythm of Ma'at, the gates of memory opened inwardly. Insight would rise not as revelation from above, but as remembrance from within. They called it reading the scroll of the soul. Those moments of sudden clarity, those flashes of intuition, were understood as glimpses into the library of the gods. Travelers who studied the night sky often described strange feelings while gazing upon the stars, as if they were being watched gently, as if each point of light recognized them. They said that when the heart grew quiet enough, it could hear a faint murmuring, the collective hum of all stories ever lived. That sound, barely audible yet deeply felt, was said to be the voice of Thoth himself reciting the eternal narrative of existence. To imagine the divine library was to imagine consciousness without boundary, a place where every beginning and every ending coexisted, where no question remained unanswered and no truth stood alone. It was the mind of the universe, alive and self-aware, flowing through every atom, every breath, every whisper of wind. Those who truly grasped this concept understood that the library was not distant, but omnipresent, as near as one's own awareness. As night deepened over the desert, the stars reflected upon the slow-moving Nile, their light shimmering like letters upon liquid pages. The priests who watched this sight bowed their heads in reverence, understanding that the heavens were not above them, but within them. Thoth's library was not confined to sky or temple, for its shelves stretched through every living soul. To remember this truth was to awaken to the eternal wisdom that every thought, every dream, every act of love contributes to the unfolding story of the gods. Within the sacred heart of Egypt, hidden behind temple walls and guarded by silence, existed the House of Life, a place where mortals came to learn the secrets of the gods. Its chambers were not filled with noise or grandeur, but with stillness, the kind that makes the air itself hum with unseen power. The priests who entered were not chosen for wealth or birthright, but for purity of intention. To cross its threshold was to step from the world of illusion into the world of truth, leaving behind the weight of ordinary existence. Initiates arrived before dawn, when the Nile still slept beneath a veil of mist. They moved barefoot through corridors lit only by oil lamps, the scent of myrrh guiding their senses inward. Every wall spoke in the language of hieroglyphs, depicting divine geometry and cosmic harmony. Before them stood elders clothed in linen, faces serene as stone, eyes bright with knowing. They greeted the newcomers not with words, but with silence, for the first lesson of the House of Life was that wisdom begins where speech ends. Training within those hallowed chambers did not resemble study as known today. It was not knowledge to be memorized, but awareness to be awakened. Days were spent in contemplation of sacred texts, nights in meditation beneath open sky. The pupils learned to listen to wind, to interpret the movement of water, to read the language of stars. They were taught that everything, from the flight of a bird to the shape of a flame, was a message from Thoth, written across the fabric of existence. In one dim hall stood long tables covered in papyrus scrolls. There, scribes practiced the art of writing, not for record, but for transformation. Each symbol was drawn with intention so pure it became prayer. Masters instructed them to breathe with each stroke of the brush, to let the rhythm of their heart guide the ink. To write without presence, they warned, was to desecrate the gift of Thoth. Those who succeeded describe moments where letters seemed to glow faintly, alive with the pulse of something greater than thought. At midday, students gathered near pools reflecting shafts of light that descended from openings in the ceiling. These pools were called mirrors of the soul. When one gazed into their still surfaces, one did not see reflection, but truth. Every flaw, every fear, every hidden desire rose to the surface like a shadow surfacing through water. The priests explained that self-knowledge was the foundation of divine wisdom. To command the forces of creation, one must first understand the depths of one's own heart. Evening brought ritual rather than rest. Candles were lit in precise numbers, their flames forming constellations upon the floor. Music drifted through the air, flutes, drums, voices blending into one continuous sound. It was said that these melodies replicated the vibration of the cosmos, aligning the soul with celestial rhythm. Initiates participated in these rites with closed eyes, surrendering thought to sound until consciousness expanded beyond body, entering the calm sea of unity where Thoth's wisdom resided. Between lessons, elders spoke of humility, reminding pupils that power without balance leads to darkness. They told stories of seekers who reached too quickly for forbidden truths and lost themselves to pride. Knowledge, they taught, was not a ladder but a spiral, and those who tried to ascend too fast found themselves trapped within their own illusions. To know was to serve, to understand was to become light through patience. Graduation from the House of Life was not marked by ceremony, but by quiet recognition. One morning, a student would awaken to find the world vibrating with new clarity. Birdsong revealing patterns, shadows whispering insight. That moment signaled true initiation, not into priesthood, but into consciousness itself. From that day, the initiate carried within him the living current of Thoth's teaching, a light that no darkness could extinguish. Centuries later, travelers still spoke of those silent halls, buried now beneath sand and time. They said the knowledge taught there never vanished, only transformed, carried forward in dreams, in intuition, in the still voice that speaks within all who seek truth with sincerity. The House of Life was never merely a place, it was a state of being, an eternal classroom where the divine continues to instruct those who listen. When the final breath leaves the body, the soul begins its passage across unseen waters, guided by Thoth, the keeper of divine record. Egyptians believed that death was not an ending but a continuation, a shift from visible to invisible, from weight to light. The realm beyond was not darkness but reflection, where every thought, word, and deed appeared as it truly was. To prepare for that crossing was the highest purpose of a life devoted to truth. In tombs painted with eternal color, scenes of that journey unfold like pages from a celestial manuscript. The soul, newly freed, stands before the gates of the Duat, the underworld of transformation. Before passing through, it must speak the right words, phrases learned from the sacred texts, many of which Thoth himself was said to have written. These words acted as keys, opening the doors between realms. The soul's voice, trembling yet determined, echoed through corridors of eternity, calling upon guardians of flame and shadow for safe passage. Beyond the gates awaited the Hall of Two Truths, a vast chamber lit by unseen light. At its center stood the scales of Ma'at, upon which every heart would be weighed against the feather of divine order. Thoth stood beside the balance, his pen poised above the scroll of fate. His gaze was neither harsh nor kind. It was pure awareness, recording only truth. No lie, no disguise could endure before him. The soul stood naked before its own reflection, seeing itself through the eyes of eternity. The heart, symbol of both emotion and morality, held the weight of every choice made in life. If lighter than the feather, the soul was welcomed into the fields of peace, a realm of radiant harmony where it joined ancestors in eternal communion. If heavier, it faced dissolution, its essence consumed by the devourer Amit, returning its energy to the cosmic cycle. This was not punishment, but balance, for in Egypt's philosophy, nothing is wasted, nothing is truly lost. Throughout this journey, Thoth acted as guide and witness. He recorded not to condemn, but to preserve. Every soul's passage became another line in his cosmic ledger, another verse in the song of eternity. His presence ensured that even within death there was order, and within order, compassion. He did not judge the heart, he revealed it, allowing each being to face the truth of its own creation. Priests who served Thoth prepared the dying through sacred rites, speaking prayers that eased the soul's transition. They placed amulets upon the body, the Eye of Horus for protection, the scarab for rebirth. On papyrus, they inscribed verses to be recited in the afterlife, instructions for navigating the spiritual realms. The Book of the Dead, derived from these teachings, was both map and mirror, showing that the journey after death mirrored the journey within life. Meditation upon death was not considered morbid but liberating. Those who reflected upon mortality learned to live with greater clarity, recognizing that every thought was weighed, every action inscribed. Thoth's presence reminded them that immortality did not begin after death, but within awareness itself. To know the self fully was to be free from fear of the beyond. Artists painted the afterlife as fields of gold, where souls plowed fertile soil under a gentle sun, where rivers flowed with memory instead of water. Yet beneath that imagery lay profound understanding that paradise was not a place but a state of balance, harmony between thought and spirit. When Thoth recorded a name among the blessed, it meant that soul had remembered its divine origin. Those who meditated upon this mystery realized that death was not departure but return, the soul dissolving back into the same cosmic rhythm from which it once emerged. Every prayer, every offering, every act of truth during life prepared one to meet Thoth's gaze without fear. In that moment of weighing when silence fills the heart, wisdom whispers that what passes beyond the veil is not the person, but the pure awareness that has always been eternal. Beneath the golden dunes of Egypt, where wind whispers secrets through endless night, legends speak of chambers untouched by time. They are said to lie beneath collapsed temples and forgotten cities, carved deep into the bedrock of the desert, concealed by shifting sands and divine protection. Within them, according to ancient lore, rest fragments of Thoth's writings, scrolls that shimmer with otherworldly light, their words breathing softly in the still air. Few have sought them, and fewer still returned unchanged. Travelers from distant lands told of hearing strange vibrations underfoot near the ruins of Hermopolis, as though the earth itself carried a heartbeat. Priests once spoke of tunnels spiraling downward in precise geometry, built not by mortal hands, but by those guided through vision. At their deepest point, they claimed, stood a door of stone without handle or hinge, engraved with symbols that moved when watched. Such stories lingered through centuries, blending truth and imagination until neither could be told apart. Explorers who ventured into ancient catacombs often felt a presence, an invisible watcher that neither threatened nor welcomed, only observed. Walls seemed to breathe, their carvings gleaming faintly as if remembering the touch of divine craftsmen. Some reported hearing faint echoes like distant chanting reverberating through the rock, though no passage could be found leading to its source. To those sensitive to spirit, it felt as if the boundaries between past and present had dissolved, and the temple was awake once more. Priests of Thoth were said to have hidden sacred texts during times of upheaval, fearing that unworthy hands would misuse them. They sealed their writings within chambers, protected by words of power, spells designed to confuse intruders and guard the wisdom until humanity was ready. These incantations were not meant to harm, but to veil, weaving illusions of emptiness around the treasures within. To pass such barriers, one required not force, but resonance, alignment with the frequency of divine truth. Legends tell of one seeker who meditated for 40 nights near the ruins of Edfu, guided by dreams of a glowing doorway buried in sand. On the final night, As the moon reached fullness, he claimed the ground trembled and revealed an opening leading downward. Inside he found walls covered in inscriptions describing the structure of creation, symbols of stars, spirals, and unseen forces connecting heaven and earth. When he emerged, his eyes held the stillness of eternity, yet he spoke little of what he had seen. Others who searched too greedily found only endless dunes and silence. The desert guards its mysteries with indifference, erasing footprints within moments, swallowing all sound. It is said that those who wander without reverence become lost not in space but in thought, trapped within mirages of their own desire. For the chambers beneath the sands do not yield to those who seek possession, only to those who seek understanding. Mystics later suggested that these hidden chambers may not exist in physical form but within consciousness itself. Each seeker, descending into meditation, travels through the layers of the mind just as one might move through stone corridors. The final door, engraved with living symbols, represents the threshold between intellect and revelation. To open it requires surrender, the dissolution of self into the vastness of divine memory. Yet the allure of those buried sanctuaries never faded. Poets and scholars continued to dream of them, imagining shelves of golden papyrus inscribed with the true history of creation, guarded by luminous beings who wait for the dawn of human readiness. Whether such halls lie beneath the desert or within the heart remains a mystery left unsolved by time. Every gust of desert wind carries dust once part of forgotten temples. Every grain of sand may hide a fragment of the past, a letter, a symbol, a trace of Thoth's breath. Beneath the surface, whether in earth or soul, wisdom waits, silent, patient, eternal, until another seeker dares to listen to the whisper rising from the depths of both stone and spirit. Winding through the heart of Egyptian mythology, the serpent emerged not as an emblem of deceit, but as a living symbol of transformation. It represented the spiral of creation, the eternal rhythm of birth, death, and rebirth. To the followers of Thoth, the serpent embodied the secret motion of consciousness itself, energy moving upward through the hidden pathways of spirit, awakening what lies dormant within the human soul. Its skin, shed and renewed, became a metaphor for the eternal shedding of ignorance, a cycle of death that revealed illumination beneath. Within temple carvings, serpents coiled around the staffs of priests, winding upward toward the sun disk that crowned their symbols of authority. This ascent reflected the rise of awareness through layers of being. Each coil marked a threshold, a transformation from lower to higher understanding. When initiates meditated upon the serpent, they imagined this motion within themselves, the sleeping energy of the body uncoiling like a golden thread, weaving light through the spine until it reached the crown of the mind where divine perception awakened. Priests described the serpent as the breath of Thoth, the living current connecting thought to matter. Its movement symbolized the unbroken line between heaven and earth. Those who mastered this knowledge could channel that power not for control, but for harmony, allowing wisdom to flow through them without distortion. In silence, they listened to the rhythm of the serpent's path, feeling it move in quiet grace through every heartbeat, a reminder that transformation is a continuous unfolding, never an act of force. Within myths, the serpent appeared at the threshold between worlds, guarding sacred gateways. It stood coiled at the mouth of the underworld, neither enemy nor ally, but a keeper of balance. When the soul approached the gates after death, it met this guardian not in combat, but in reflection. The serpent asked no questions, it simply revealed what the soul carried within. Those who walked in truth passed through unharmed, their light calming the creature into stillness. Those burdened by falsehood found their own shadows rising to meet them. Thoth's connection to the serpent extended into the mysteries of writing itself. The sinuous shapes of hieroglyphs echoed the serpent's movement, flowing across papyrus like a river of living energy. Every curve and twist mirrored the serpent's form, reminding the scribe that wisdom must move, not stagnate. Knowledge trapped in pride becomes venom. Knowledge shared in humility becomes healing. In this duality lay the serpent's deepest lesson, that creation and destruction are two faces of the same eternal truth. During nocturnal rituals, initiates sometimes visualize the serpent coiled around the moon, its silver scales gleaming in the reflected light of Thoth. They believed this vision represented the uniting of opposites, reason and intuition, intellect and emotion. The serpent's embrace around the lunar sphere symbolized the mind encircling mystery, holding it not to dominate, but to understand. In that unity, divine equilibrium was found. Legends tell of priests who journeyed inward through trance, guided by Thoth's energy in the form of a radiant serpent. As it ascended within them, they reported visions of stars spinning like living eyes, of voices whispering truths beyond language. Upon awakening, they described feeling transformed, their perception expanded beyond the boundary of self. These were not hallucinations but revelations, glimpses into the subtle architecture of spirit, where everything moves in spirals, never in straight lines. The serpent of wisdom remains both teacher and mirror. It does not grant knowledge easily, for it demands patience and surrender. To walk its path is to face one's own illusions, to let go of the false skins of ego until only light remains. Its coils enfold both fear and enlightenment, reminding every seeker that the path to divine knowledge winds inward, through the quiet corridors of the soul, toward the still center where Thoth waits. Silent, eternal, and aware. Hidden within the teachings of Thoth lies a secret older than temples, older than kings, the mystery of inner transformation. It was said that true alchemy was not the changing of metals into gold, but the purification of the human heart into a vessel capable of holding divine light. Those who sought this art understood that the greatest laboratory existed within one's own being, where emotion, thought, and spirit merged into a single current of creation. Through this sacred chemistry, ignorance became wisdom, and sorrow became strength. Priests taught that the heart was the truest philosopher's stone. It contained the essence of both fire and water, passion and serenity. When balanced, it produced a radiance that could illuminate the mind and heal the body. The rituals of Thoth's followers often involved quiet contemplation upon the heart's rhythm, aligning it with the pulse of the universe. To feel one's heartbeat in stillness was to hear the echo of creation itself. Through this awareness, transformation began. Alchemy of the heart was not achieved through effort, but through surrender. The seeker had to allow old wounds, resentments, and fears to surface like impurities rising in molten gold. Instead of resisting, they observed each emotion with compassion, letting the fire of awareness refine it into clarity. This process mirrored the alchemist's furnace, where base matter burned away until only essence remained. In the same way, the spiritual initiate burned away falsehood until truth stood radiant and untouched. Priests of Thoth described this inner work as the art of balancing opposites. The heart was seen as the meeting place of heaven and earth, intellect descending from above, emotion rising from below. When these forces met in harmony, a light was born that neither thought nor feeling could create alone. This light was called the living flame, a consciousness beyond duality. Those who reached this state could heal not by word or gesture, but by presence alone, their energy resonating with divine equilibrium. Within quiet sanctuaries, initiates practiced breath as ritual. Each inhalation drew in divine intelligence, Each exhalation released attachment. Over time, this breathing became a rhythm of purification, polishing the mirror of the heart until it reflected eternity without distortion. The body grew calm, the mind silent, and a warmth spread through the chest like sunrise over still water. That warmth was not emotion but recognition, the awareness that within the heart resides the same light that moves through the stars. Ancient writings described Thoth himself as the alchemist of consciousness, the one who turned ignorance into wisdom through compassion. His magic was not bound to formulas or potions, but to understanding. He taught that creation itself is an act of alchemy where chaos becomes order through the embrace of divine will. Each life, each struggle, each joy was part of that sacred distillation, refining spirit toward ever greater purity. Students who reached this state describe profound calm, an unshakable peace untouched by circumstance. They saw the world as a vast interplay of forces, each necessary, each sacred. Pain no longer seemed punishment but instruction, guiding awareness toward deeper unity. The alchemy of the heart did not separate the holy from the mundane. It revealed that everything was already sacred, waiting only for perception to awaken. To live from this awakened heart was to walk as a flame in human form, steady, luminous, and compassionate. One's words carried resonance, one's silence carried meaning. The breath itself became a prayer. Thoth's followers called this the second birth, the moment when mortal identity dissolved into divine awareness. Through the quiet fire of love, the human being became both student and teacher, mirror and light. Long before the pyramids rose from the sands, a vision was born in the minds of those who listened to the rhythm of the stars. They claimed Thoth had revealed to them the sacred proportions of the cosmos, numbers that shaped the fabric of matter and song alike. From those measurements came the architecture of eternity, temples aligned with constellations, monuments that breathed in harmony with the heavens. To build was to pray, to calculate was to worship. Within the silent geometry of Egypt's wonders, every line concealed a secret. The angle of each wall, the position of each passage, the distance between every pillar, all mirrored celestial harmonies. Builders were not mere craftsmen, they were initiates, translating divine mathematics into form. Their blueprints were guided by vision, not by rule, for they believed that stone, when properly arranged, could capture the music of creation. Through balance of proportion, they sought to anchor heaven upon earth. When the first light of dawn struck the pyramid's apex, it marked more than sunrise. It signified communication between realms. The ancients believed that energy descended along shafts of light, entering the structure like breath entering lungs. Within those walls, priests performed rituals timed precisely to the movement of stars. Sound resonated through chambers carved to amplify specific frequencies, transforming music into invisible architecture. Those vibrations were said to awaken the sleeping consciousness of the land itself. Legends claimed that Thoth stood beside the master architects, whispering the mathematics of the divine into their dreams. They awoke with visions of blueprints drawn in light, designs that encoded the principles of harmony and resurrection. By obeying these proportions, they ensured that every temple, every pyramid, functioned as both monument and instrument, a place where physical matter could sing the song of the cosmos. Beneath the grandeur of those structures lay a purpose far subtler than tomb or temple. Each was a conduit, channeling energy between earth and sky. As wind moved through the corridors, it carried with it the breath of spirit, harmonizing the elements. Water flowed beneath certain temples to purify, while fire burned in sanctuaries above to transform. Through these four forces, air, water, fire, and earth, the architecture of Thoth became a living embodiment of creation itself. Builders recorded none of their true teachings in words. They built them into form. To stand within those spaces was to feel what cannot be read, a pulse of unity, an awareness that transcended intellect. Travelers who entered the pyramids spoke of an uncanny stillness that silenced thought, as though time itself paused to listen. Within that silence, seekers felt their own heartbeat merge with the rhythm of the stones, and for an instant they touched the mind of Thoth. Egyptian scholars later taught that geometry was not invention but revelation, that each number held a vibration connected to the divine order. Circles symbolized eternity, triangles ascent, squares stability, and the golden ratio expressed perfect harmony. These forms were not abstractions but living energies woven into the fabric of existence. By aligning with them, builders believed they were tuning human consciousness to the cosmic frequency that sustains creation. Those who worked under moonlight claimed to see faint glows outlining the structures, as if the stones themselves breathed. They said Thoth's presence walked through the corridors in the form of light, inspecting the alignment of shadow and flame. When the work was complete, the masters knelt in silence, not to celebrate achievement, but to offer gratitude for the guidance that flowed through them. For them, architecture was never invention, it was remembrance. To gaze upon those monuments even now is to feel a quiet calling, an echo of that ancient harmony that still resonates through their stone. The pyramids remain not merely relics but living instruments, humming faintly with the vibration of divine mathematics. Those who approach with reverence can still sense the invisible pattern woven through their symmetry, the whisper of Thoth guiding mankind to build not just with hands but with spirit. When the last embers of Egypt's ancient wisdom began to fade beneath the weight of new empires, a voice from the desert rose again, carrying the same vibration that once echoed through Thoth's temples. This voice spoke in Greek, not Egyptian, yet its message was the same eternal truth, reborn in new language and new form. It called itself Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, a being said to unite the mind of Thoth with the reason of Greece, the mystic bridge between worlds and ages. His teachings became the golden thread that wove Egyptian mystery into the fabric of Western thought. Hermes Trismegistus was not viewed as a man, but as a living principle, the embodiment of divine intelligence wearing many names through time. To the Egyptians, he was Jehuti, the lunar scribe of the gods. To the Greeks, Hermes, the messenger of Olympus. When the two traditions merged, they did not erase one another but harmonized, creating a new synthesis of spirit and science. Through him, the wisdom of the Nile flowed into the libraries of Alexandria, where scholars translated ancient scrolls into words that could speak to future civilizations. Among the surviving fragments of this union lay a single text said to contain the heart of the mystery, the Emerald Tablet. It was not written upon papyrus or carved into stone, but engraved upon green crystal, radiant with unearthly light. The words inscribed upon it were few, yet their meaning stretched beyond comprehension. As above, so below, as within, so without. These lines became the pulse of Hermetic philosophy, a reminder that all things mirror one another across dimensions. To understand the smallest motion was to comprehend the stars. To know oneself was to know the universe. Scholars and mystics throughout centuries claimed that this tablet was the continuation of the Book of Thoth, condensed into symbols for a new era. They believed Hermes Trismegistus was not a successor, but a reflection, Thoth reborn to guide humanity once more. The Emerald Tablet was said to contain the formula by which spirit descends into matter, and matter ascends into spirit, a divine chemistry that united heaven and earth. Those who read its lines felt that every word pulsed like a heartbeat, each syllable containing the weight of galaxies. Hermetic initiates in Alexandria devoted their lives to decoding these mysteries. They saw no conflict between faith and reason, for both were expressions of the same truth. Mathematics, music, and magic were not separate disciplines, but branches of one living science, the science of divine correspondence. To study geometry was to study the mind of God. To practice alchemy was to imitate creation itself. In their quiet chambers, surrounded by the scent of oil and parchment, they whispered the name of Thoth in reverence, recognizing in Hermes his eternal reflection. Mystics of later centuries carried this wisdom through time like a hidden flame. In the deserts of Arabia, alchemists spoke of the emerald tablet as the key to transmutation, the sacred formula that turned ignorance into enlightenment. In medieval Europe, scholars and monks guarded its Latin translations as relics of divine truth, while philosophers in the Renaissance proclaimed Hermes Trismegistus as the father of all wisdom. Through every language and every faith, his words continued to resonate, uniting seekers who recognized the same ancient current beneath different forms. Those who meditated upon the tablet understood that its message was not instruction, but revelation. The line, as above, so below, spoke not of mimicry, but of harmony, that every movement in the heavens finds its reflection within the human soul. To purify the inner world was to balance the outer. To align thought with truth was to reshape destiny. This was the essence of Thoth's legacy, carried forward through Hermes. The realization that divinity is not distant, but present in every breath, every thought, every act of awareness. Even now, the words of the Emerald Tablet remain like a quiet echo within the collective mind of humanity. They remind every generation that wisdom is not bound by language or era, that truth transforms yet never dies. The figure of Hermes Trismegistus stands between worlds, holding in one hand the quill of Thoth, and in the other the staff of the Greek messenger, uniting logic and mysticism, science and spirit. Through him, the whisper of Egypt continues, carried not by sand or papyrus, but through the hearts of those who still seek to know the universe by knowing themselves. Whispers of the Book of Thoth have never truly fallen silent. Through centuries of conquest, decay, and rebirth, the legend persisted, shifting from temple chant to scholar's dream, from myth to metaphor. Across deserts, mountains, and seas, seekers continued their search for the fabled manuscript said to contain the language of creation. Each era reimagined it in new forms: hidden scrolls, lost tablets, coded manuscripts, or celestial libraries. Yet the pursuit remained unchanged, the longing to touch the source of all understanding. Medieval alchemists spoke of a hidden book written in symbols of fire, guarded by invisible masters who appeared only to those who had purified their souls. Renaissance philosophers saw its reflection in the Hermetic texts, believing that within their lines lay fragments of the original wisdom. Even mystics of later ages in candle-lit chambers, filled with the scent of ink and wax, claimed to hear faint whispers guiding their hand as they wrote. They believed they were continuing the work of Thoth, rewriting the eternal book through intuition. Throughout history, the pursuit of that sacred knowledge often mirrored the human condition itself, a journey outward that ultimately leads inward. Many who sought the Book of Thoth began with ambition, desiring mastery over nature or immortality. Yet as their search deepened, they discovered that the true power they chased could not be possessed. The book was not a thing to hold, but a state to embody. Those who understood this truth found peace. Those who refused it found madness. Legends spoke of seekers disappearing into deserts, mountains, or oceans, chasing visions that dissolved like mirages. Some claimed that the book moved through time, appearing to the worthy and vanishing from the unready. In dreams, it was seen floating above pools of light, its pages turning without hand, its words shifting with every glance. To read it required stillness, for the letters changed according to the reader's heart. Those who approached it with greed found only chaos. Those who came in humility saw patterns of infinite harmony. Philosophers later understood the story as a metaphor for the evolution of consciousness. Humanity, they said, is forever searching for the lost book because it senses its absence within. The myth became an allegory for remembrance, the slow awakening of divine memory buried beneath layers of forgetting. To seek the book is to seek one's origin, to remember the language spoken before words, when thought and creation were one. Every age produced its own interpreters of the mystery. In monasteries, scholars copied cryptic diagrams that mirrored the geometry of stars. In secret societies, initiates spoke of hidden libraries preserved by light beings beneath the sands. Yet the truest interpreters were those who understood that the Book of Thoth never needed to be found, only rediscovered within the silence of the heart. To open that inner book required no ink, no parchment, only awareness purified by intention. Modern seekers still feel the echo of that quest. In quiet moments of reflection when mind and world grow still, a subtle remembrance stirs as if a forgotten text waits to be read behind the eyes. It is not written in letters but in intuition, not in chapters but in insights that arise from within. Each realization becomes a line, each act of compassion a verse. To live with wisdom is to continue writing the Book of Thoth with one's own life. Thus the legend persists not as an object of pursuit but as an eternal invitation. The lost book may remain hidden beneath the sands or the stars, yet its essence flows through every thought that seeks truth. The quest itself is the teaching, and the longing to know is already part of knowing. Those who walk this path discover that the search never ends because the book itself is alive, unfolding through the soul of every being who dares to ask where wisdom truly resides. Every journey through myth and memory leads at last to reflection, not upon the heavens above, but upon the quiet universe within. Those who listened long enough to the whispers of Thoth began to understand that the divine scribe never wrote upon stone alone. His true script was consciousness itself. The mind, the heart, the breath, these were his papyrus, and the ink he used was experience. Within every person resides a fragment of his eternal library, waiting patiently to be opened through awareness. When the priests spoke of the Book of Thoth, they described not a thing but a condition, the awakening of remembrance. To read its words was to perceive the unity beneath all division, to feel the pulse of the divine moving through thought, emotion, and form. Every joy and sorrow became a lesson written by invisible hand, each day a page turned in the unfolding story of the soul. The reader was both author and student, both question and answer, for wisdom flowed through them as through the Nile, continuous, transforming, alive. The true temple of Thoth exists not in stone but in stillness. Whenever the mind grows quiet enough, the door opens to that sanctuary where silence speaks. Within that silence, one feels the gentle rhythm of creation, a harmony too vast for words, yet intimately familiar. The longer one listens, the clearer it becomes that divine knowledge is not distant, not earned, not hidden by gods or guarded by priests. It has always been here, humming beneath thought, waiting for recognition. Those who meditate upon the heart come to sense this presence as a light behind the eyes, a warmth behind the breath. It does not demand belief. It reveals itself through experience. The more one surrenders to awareness, the more the boundaries between self and cosmos dissolve. What once seemed outside becomes within, and what seemed within radiates outward without limit. Thoth's true teaching was never ownership of knowledge, but union with it. In moments of quiet perception, one realizes that every element of existence speaks the same language. Wind, water, fire, and thought all follow the same rhythm. The gods of Egypt, the stars above, the pulse of the heart, each reflects the same living intelligence. To recognize this is to awaken the scribe within, the aspect of consciousness that records not through pen but through understanding. Every insight becomes scripture, every breath a prayer written in light. Ancient teachers called this realization remembering the name, for in awakening the inner scribe, one recalls the eternal name of the self, the voice that has never been separate from creation. This remembrance dissolves fear, for death and life lose their distinction when seen from the view of eternity. The soul moves through form after form, recording, learning, refining, until all ink runs clear and all pages shine with pure awareness. When the inner book opens, the seeker understands that no wisdom was ever lost, no truth ever hidden. The long journey through temples, rivers, and myths was only a reflection of the inward path. The Nile that carried the memories of Egypt is the same river that flows through consciousness, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, yet always returning to the sea of unity. To awaken is to step into that current willingly, allowing it to carry the soul toward stillness. Every sound, every thought, every act of compassion becomes part of the infinite dialogue between the human and the divine. Thoth's whisper continues through every mind that pauses to listen, through every heart that learns to balance reason and love. The ancient book, once sought across sands and stars, reveals itself at last as the living awareness within. To live with open eyes and open heart is to read its eternal lines, to become both page and pen, both river and moonlight, both silence and song. Night settles once more upon the ancient land, and the Nile glides silently under the moon's gaze. Its waters reflect the same celestial rhythm that guided the first priests, the same calm pulse that once echoed through the temples of Thoth. Stars shimmer like ink droplets spilled upon the dark sky, forming constellations that seem to write messages across the heavens. Those who watch closely can almost sense the movement of a pen unseen, tracing the eternal story that has no beginning and no conclusion. Within that vast stillness, Thoth's presence lingers, not as an image carved in stone, nor as a distant deity, but as the quiet intelligence flowing through every breath of life. He remains the witness of all that changes, the silent recorder who writes upon the fabric of time without ever exhausting the scroll. To feel his presence is to feel continuity itself, the awareness that outlasts all eras, all forms, all dreams. As the mind drifts through memory, the temples rise again in thought, their columns gleaming beneath moonlight, their corridors echoing with chants long faded from mortal ear. Yet though the voices have vanished, their resonance endures within the heart of humankind. Every poem written in wonder, every discovery born of curiosity, every act of truth spoken in courage carries a reflection of Thoth's wisdom. He is the scribe not only of gods but of all beings who seek to understand their place within creation's unfolding. When dawn approaches, the first light touches the desert, painting the horizon with gold. The world awakens, yet the mystery remains. The river still murmurs beneath the hush of morning, carrying within its current the songs of ages past. Those who listen closely may hear its whisper, not words, but understanding, a quiet assurance that knowledge is eternal, and that each soul contributes a verse to the vast hymn of existence. To remember Thoth is to remember that wisdom is not an inheritance from the past, but a living presence in every moment. The stories of gods and temples, scrolls and stars are reflections of a deeper reality, the awakening of consciousness itself. Within every question lies the spark of divinity. Within every act of seeking, the movement of creation continues. The eternal scribe writes not for remembrance, but for becoming. As night yields to day, awareness lingers like soft light upon the mind. The journey through myth and mystery returns finally to the listener, to the one who has followed the whispers of the Nile, the voice of the moon, the rhythm of thought and silence. That listener, perhaps without realizing it, has walked the same path as the ancients, crossing from wonder into wisdom, from searching into remembering. The Book of Thoth, once sought in hidden chambers and celestial dreams, now rests quietly within, open and radiant. And every breath you take continues this story, every thought shaped with care, every act of kindness, every moment of curiosity becomes another line written upon the scroll of eternity. You are both the reader and the author, the seeker and the found. The voice of Thoth moves through you as awareness itself, reminding you that the universe is still being written, word by word, moment by moment, through every living soul that chooses to awaken. The river of memory flows onward, reflecting stars and stories alike. The temples sleep beneath sand, yet their essence endures. The moon still circles above, marking time in silver arcs. And somewhere, beyond the edge of sight, Thoth continues to write, his quill dipped in the light of creation, inscribing the endless dialogue between the divine and the human heart. May this whisper of ancient wisdom stay with you. Soft as the river's current, bright as the ibis's wing beneath the moon. Let it remind you that knowledge lives not in the pages of forgotten books, but in the stillness that waits behind every thought. When you close your eyes tonight, may you hear that quiet scribe within you, continuing to write the story of your own becoming. If this journey through the hidden wisdom of Thoth has brought peace or wonder to your night, consider supporting this work. Subscribe to the channel to join the circle of seekers who listen to the ancient echoes. Like this film to let it reach others who wander through sleepless hours in search of mystery and calm. Share your reflections in the comments. Every thought, every feeling is another verse in this unfolding tale. And share this story with those close to your heart so the river of memory may continue to flow, carrying light from one soul to another.